it has to have an economic impact. So to nudge people to do the right thing. And then they will do it. I mean, then they will. So that's for me the key. How do we make this attractive for the different entities in the system?
So, hello everyone, and welcome to the MSP Global podcast. Today we're going to be talking about sustainability, which is one of the industry's most defining challenges, but it's also a huge opportunity. Customers are now demanding sort of more measurable impact. Regulators are raising the bar. And for MSPs, this now means that they're being asked to deliver growth that's not just efficient, but it's also responsible. So it's a challenge that we're going to be talking about today. We're discussing sustainability, obviously, but also sovereignty and competitiveness and how this intersects. And really the goal, I think, for us today is to talk about how MSPs who get that balance right and manage to master that will be defining the next decade. So joining me to unpack that today is Patricia Hillebrand from R&T Rausch. And then Thomas Demoor from Impossible Cloud. Thank you so much for joining me and taking time out of your busy schedules, I'm sure, today. So Patricia, Thomas, let's start with some quick introductions. Patricia, take us away.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for the invite and the possibility to sit here in the room and have a great conversation. Yeah, so my name is Patricia. I work with R&T, which is a Germany-based hardware manufacturer and solution provider, and I'm in charge of the technical alliances.
Amazing. Thanks for coming. And Thomas?
Happy to be here. Thanks a lot indeed for setting this up. Great show, having a ton of fun. Impossible Cloud is a Hamburg-based, so it's Germany here.
Yes.
So strong here. I'm Belgian, but the company is German. So Impossible Cloud is a Hamburg-based public cloud provider focusing on S3-compatible object storage right now. That's the product we have in the market, and I think we'll talk a lot about how that's special. Before, I worked on object storage systems for over 10 years at Amplidata, which was a startup. Western Digital, and then Quantum, which is a tape company where we built a Glacier-like system.
Well, thank you both for coming. Can you give us a quick, just before we dive into the conversation, why don't you give us a quick overview of kind of what your different companies have been doing here, talking about at MSP Global this year? Just a very high level. Patricia?
Well, as you said, the overarching kind of theme of this great event is how MSPs can grow their ecosystem. So number one, I think it is still a very competitive landscape, but especially now with disruptive technology like AI also kind of hitting the MSPs, who are very often local heroes and the trusted advisors for their customers, who cannot get a grip on the complexity of the entire tech stack anymore. So they are heavily reliant on MSPs, which is great, but also for the MSP to get their head around all the technology and stuff. And you know, it's nice to talk about AI, but AI without underlying, preferably S3 object storage, doesn't really make sense either. So number two, technical definitions we know from the past. Take immutability as an example. Like 10 years ago, WARM, anyone knew what it meant. This is becoming more blurry. And that doesn't make it easier. So there is, I think, a great opportunity, but it's also a challenging time for MSPs, and they have to be all over the place.
I love the fact that you mentioned the MSPs as local heroes, because I think that ties a little bit into our story. The MSPs are the local heroes. And then on the data center side, you again want a region. You want your data to be in a certain geographical and or legislative area. And so there's this layer in between, which is all this complex software. And so it's very hard to do all of that. And so we work with the local heroes, empower them by offering a single software platform, which offers S3 and has all the technical nitty-gritty details that are required there. But then again, rely for the hardware on a network of colocation data centers that are third parties that we, as partners in a sharing model, work with together.
So let's start then, coming to that point you said about, the theme for this year, grow your ecosystem, but also this underlying efficiency and growth theme, which is one of our subtopics. Because sustainability is shifted now from being this sort of limiter. People, it's in the way, that you have to kind of meet certain requirements. But now it's being seen more as this sort of engineering edge as well. Like there's opportunities here. And since efficiency and growth is a core theme, I wanted to start with a question of like, where do you see the biggest opportunities for MSPs to build smarter and do more with less?
Well, economically, doing more with less is impossible. It's a very nice marketing term, but I think the reality tells you that you need to look at many angles. So as an example, also to become more sustainable, at the same time becoming more flexible and more profitable, very important for our MSPs, is to extend the lifetime of a piece of hardware. And it doesn't matter whether it's storage or a server or a switch or any other networking component or network component. Of course, this is not what the manufacturers of those devices like, but as an example at R&T, this is our specialty. So we already looked at how we could achieve this. And because our CEO is really, someone called him the mad inventor, but he loves to tinker, and we have developed a server chassis that has a lot of mounting points. So you can just remove certain components, stick other components in. And this is what the admin in the data center can do. So you don't need to ship the hardware back and forth. And I think this is how, from the manufacturer side, we have to become smarter, and not like this short lifetime. The product will be done, so because I can sell a new one. So I'm not against capitalism, but there's a limit, and I think we've reached that limit.
So focused on sort of modular systems and allowing the MSP to kind of help keep that cost down, one, but also like extending the lifetime of that hardware that they are investing in. I love that. And Thomas, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you're approaching things? You've got your decentralized model that's kind of cutting the idle capacity, improving utilization. How can this play into the doing more with less marketing term?
Indeed, I think Patricia's completely right on the component level, and we'll definitely come to that later. But indeed, focusing on the decentralized data centers. I mean, these colocation data centers have existed for a very long time. They've seen a part of their business move to the public clouds. And so definitely they've been looking for like other go-to-market opportunities. Some of them are started to dabble into software, into providing systems, but that's not their core expertise. And so we basically really provide a vehicle that allows us to, everybody focuses on their expertise. We focus on the software and the decentralized object storage architecture. And they focus on optimizing the hardware, optimizing also cost there, operations, indeed replacing, because as we know, some of these components are not end of life after 5 years.
Correct.
Say a hard disk. So, I mean, of course, the failure rates go up, but there's still plenty of them which can get to year 7. And so, but first of all, on the data centers, building new data centers is obviously has a bigger impact on the planet than leveraging these ones which are already there.
Exactly.
And so that's really what we try to focus on. Find partners there who want to grow together rather than host their own open source version of Ceph or something like that. So we have a specific team. We focus on object storage. We build in-house patent pending technology that we're the experts in, and we let them be the experts in the hardware, and together we get to a better system. And also our architecture specifically leverages the fact that we have this geographical options there to place the data. And so that also allows us to offer protection levels and a more efficient system. So also that translates into costs. Efficiency translates into costs. And so a cheaper system is a more sustainable system.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah, and a modular approach is also important. So we've been talking to some MSPs here who said, so I never started, let's say, an ultra fast object storage stack yet. So I have 3 or 4 customers who asked me. So I said, well, why don't you start with your first little cluster, 40, 50 terabyte, to satisfy those customers, and then you scale out. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh yeah, actually, can we do this? Yes, of course we can do this. Yeah, so there's a lot technology provides, but as Thomas said, not everyone can be an expert in all areas. So it's very important that we inside the IT sector, this entire big ecosystem, talk to each other.
Do you say is there a knowledge gap then for that they're not understanding the potential?
Well, it's not very polite to say they don't understand it, but I think there is a knowledge gap, but this is maybe related to the workload. I mean, if you have 1 or 2 hours per day to really see what's new, how can I combine certain technologies in a very efficient and profitable way, I think we wouldn't have that conversation. But the reality is that the people are so snowed under, and it's also that I think a little bit also a generation problem. So there are a lot of very, very intelligent young people, but very often that's what I'm observing, is they miss out the basics. We old farts, no, sorry, Thomas. No, I'm as an old fart, had to learn. Yeah. So object storage, as an example, for many MSPs, to my utmost surprise, is still kind of, is that suitable for me? Oh, is that really something I need? This is only for the big guys, like the, big hyperscalers. No, you're the local hero. You can do exactly the same for your customers. So have the data local, have the data under control, especially with the decentralized approach, what you guys do at Impossible Cloud. I think that's very smart, because also from a security perspective, that's the way forward. And it's, as I said, we in the industry, the experts have to unite and talk to each other. We can still be competitors, but that doesn't hurt. You can still, in order to, make sure our customers get the best solution ever, that's what we have to do.
Yeah. I mean, I love that because it feeds straight back into what we're doing here today.
Yeah.
Like it's helping connect vendors, partners, MSPs with each other. And it's a challenge that we're all hopefully working towards together. And I think that's super important. I want to get on to coming to the data locality and this sort of digital sovereignty conversation, because I mean it's an ever-growing topic in a more and more geopolitically unstable world as well. Like wanting to have a European cloud, our own, is vital. I mean, this is something that you've been talking about, Patricia, yesterday. Today, actually, right?
This morning it was a
yeah.
great panel. I enjoyed it a lot, watching that or listening to that.
Yeah. And so we were talking before when we were preparing for this about the Gaia-X framework that shows Europe as building its own playbook for that relation between the data sovereignty and energy responsibility. Patricia, your team led that discussion, and Rausch have been keeping all design and production within Germany, as also Thomas is doing the same. So could you please share between you and both dive in how these principles of like regional design, local control, and the sort of shorter supply chains that are enabled then contribute to this sustainability and resilience for your organizations and for this industry?
Well, from the pure hardware perspective, it is relatively easy. So what we do with our own hardware design is 2 things. We love to build as dense as we can, and with as little components as we can. So that means that we always have to listen to our customers, understand their requirements, and then build a server or storage box to their needs. Our strong belief at R&T is that the hardware has to be the perfect fit for the use case, the applications that are run on it, and not that the use cases or the applications have to adopt with the underlying hardware. So, and I'm not saying that the standard machines or configurations provided by the big A brands are bad. Not at all, don't get me wrong. But if you open a standard server from any of the A brands, you five fans automatically, always. So every fan consumes energy. So if I look at the hardware design, so maybe I only need 3 fans. So, and that is, where my savings begin. So we cannot maybe not build personalized service and storage for every use case, but especially inside a data center where the data center operator knows quite well what the customers want and what the services are, there's a lot of optimization we can do. So number two, I mean, of course, when you open a server or storage box, some components you can get only from Asia, because unfortunately Europe has missed the point to build the factories that we can manufacture here on this continent. Yeah. That is hopefully changing as well. But as long as and we have all seen this, when you are so dependent on supply chains and that supply chain breaks, we're all screwed. There's nothing you can do, which means MSPs cannot write the invoices, customers do not get the services they need, etc., etc., etc. So shortened supply chains is not only good for the environment; it's also good for your wallet. Yeah. And I think local heroes better understand what their audiences want and need, because even inside one country, I mean, Northern England is somewhat different to the south. Not even to mention Wales and Scotland and Ireland, of course. And that is normal, and that isn't bad.
Yeah.
So this is why I think, thinking more local is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we'll get to that later. I think it will indeed require a consolidated European effort. I mean, if you've been in Taiwan and seen the factories there, they're a small city, and so it will not blossom up by itself. So we'll need a consolidated effort there. But I think we'll talk about that. That's definitely those things are starting to happen. On the first point you highlighted, I think there's a really good synergy here as well. That's exactly how we also build our software. So we build our software exactly to leverage different type of hardware components in the areas that they matter. And I cannot go into too much detail here. It's not a technical podcast, and some of this stuff is still patent pending, so I can't tell about everything. But the access layer, the metadata layer, and then the core storage have quite different requirements. And so not all of them require high performance boxes. Some of them, like the hard disk bottom part, as Patricia mentioned, these very dense servers are really a great fit there. If you have 90 or 106 devices in a single enclosure, it's dense. Also, in terms of sustainability, that's a win.
Yeah.
And so we try to we also need some high performance NVMe and the metadata system and some big processors here and there. But in those other boxes, we don't need that. And then again, if you go to AI, if you have a local cache for AI, because AI is also moving to use the centralized S3 object storage systems and only have local caching close to the GPU. So as that industry is materializing, also there, the cost trade-off and the craze of I need to join this, and now people start thinking and starting to optimize the system. You also see there that there's some of these hot workloads are moving to object store. Of course, that's a different storage class. It has a different architecture. But so we leverage the different types of hardware to basically get the most out of them and only use high-performant, expensive, energy-hungry systems where it's really required.
Yeah.
If I just need to connect over the internet, over the network to a remote hard disk, I don't need the latest and greatest processor over there.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but then it also comes back to what we discussed before, right? Expertise. So a lot of even tech decision makers or IT decision makers are well aware of some marketing messages, but storage classes, I think, uber important. Data tiering was considered dead already. I think this is more important than ever these days. Yeah, because it also, as you said, ultra high performance storage needs a lot of cooling.
Yeah.
So not all data has to sit on those, uber fast and expensive primary storage devices.
Yeah. But so, and when we talk about the MSPs here today, like, have these principles made their way into the MSP decision making yet? Is it generally sort of more policy than practice?
I think it depends.
What's the appetite like, for actually thinking about this?
It really depends. You have some very, let's say, innovative MSPs here, but also a lot of what I would call, in a very diplomatic way, traditional MSPs. So they rely on the tech stacks they know and understand for many, many years, and they are very hesitant to rethink their tech stacks. And when I say rethinking their tech stacks, there's also, and I think that is something we need to change, that thinking about a new technology and adding it to the service portfolio doesn't mean rip and replace. It's like adding it. So keep your traditional stack to secure your bread and butter business, but in order to elevate, offer more services, become more profitable, and satisfy the requirements new customers have, you need to level up. And then, keep your traditional block and file storage, but also put your object storage stack next to the block or file. That doesn't hurt. They won't hurt each other.
Yeah. Well, what can we do? What can we do to educate? This is me just being interested as an event organizer, building this community of knowledge sharing. And what can we do to help?
Oh, I'm pretty sure that's your day-to-day job, Thomas, right?
Yes.
This educational piece.
Definitely. I also think, of course, we can say events like this help a lot. And as you already highlighted, some MSPs need to get educated, but we need to think as vendors, or how can we help, right? And how can we be part of the solution? And I have to say, it's not easy. We make it complicated. You mentioned Worm. AWS reinvented it as object lock, and people get confused, right? And it behaves like there's slight different nuances also between AWS and then the other hyperscalers. So everybody has their own version of the standard. And yeah, as an MSP who needs to support my local businesses, that's not their day job. Keeping up with all these different industry trends and how things evolve. So definitely there are efforts also in the larger community. A couple of weeks ago, I was in California at the SNIA event for around S3 compatibility, where we try to come together with a lot of vendors and try to set a standard and see if we can make that happen. I think there's a lot of other efforts going on. I think you already mentioned Gaia-X, which I think we should dive in as well. But really, it's also our job to make it easier. And so myself and then our marketing and sales teams have a big role to play in making things simpler up to the product level. It's very technical also today inside our consoles and the APIs, and we're trying to, the power users can go with the APIs, but in our visual UI, we try to make it simple for end users and also towards partners. So MSPs, we have a separate UI for partners where they can manage their customers, they can billing, reporting. I mean, all of those things need to come into this century as well. People are getting used to nice visualizations with Grafana and Prometheus and all these kind of cool tools. We also need to bring that to the MSPs so that they don't need to, again, reinvent that as well.
Since you touched on Gaia-X, for someone listening in who's unaware of these movements in the industry, could someone take a stab at just sort of explaining what that's all about and help us understand?
Well, at the end of the day, it is a European or EU initiative, bringing the right experts and vendors to the table to create a European cloud. Yeah, because we all know that, if someone in the White House decides to pull the plug, they will, because they've done it already. So this is not like a black cloud you draw. It is a reality, and especially with the current geopolitical uncertainties, it becomes more evident than ever. So Gaia-X also, promises digital independency, because it would also fall under European legislation. That means our GDPR rules and regulations. And I know not everyone is really a fan of the EU regulations, but at the end of the day, they are very, very important, because data is not only the new oil, and a lot of people out there and consumers don't understand that very often they pay a lot of money by not properly protecting their personal data.
For me, European, indeed, it's the European thing, maybe first as a company, and then linking it to Gaia-X. For me, there's at least 3 layers for us. One is, of course, having a European data center, but of course the American hyperscalers have the same. You have the physically the geolocation of the hardware is in Europe, but that's not enough. I think one of the hyperscalers had to testify in front of the French Senate about 2 months ago, and they basically had person from the vendor said like, if they really force us, we basically have to give a copy of the data to the US government. So, which is completely against the GDPR law. Yes. So, of course, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know if the GDPR and the US Cloud Act people ever go head to head in court. I don't even know if such a court exists. Probably not. So it's indeed a geopolitical standoff. And so for me, there's also an important third aspect. And I worked for American companies for probably over the last 10 years before coming to Impossible Cloud. There's a ton of great people there, but also for me, it's important that my team is a European. So we're building, we're not taking just some software off the shelf. The technology, the knowledge and the expertise to optimize the hardware setup, to change the software, to use that hardware in the best way, to have knowledge about the details of the S3 protocol. It's in Europe with European people. We have had HQs in Germany, but I have people in my team from all over Europe, and we gather once a month at the whiteboard in Hamburg, and then everybody goes home. But it's European people, and we have the technical knowledge in Europe to build a system which can rival those other systems.
And why now? Why is now the pivotal moment to really be ramping up these initiatives?
Well, I think Gaia-X exists for quite a long time. Some 5-6 years, roughly.
I think 2019 or something. Yeah. They started, but then they took off in 2020, I think.
Yeah. So I don't see the progress I would like to see, to be very frank. Some members of the Gaia-X project already bailed out and do their own thing now for various reasons. But I think what we need here in Europe really is speed those initiatives up. We don't have the time anymore to wait and discuss and, also address the most unlikely corner case. So we should do what the people in the Nordics are very good at. They say, okay, we'll draft a plan that is suitable for 80%, and we'll have a look for the remaining 20% as we go. But we're not going to wait until we fulfill the 100% and delay everything. We give it a go. And this is, I think, a mentality which Europe needs to adopt. The Germans are very bad at it. So absolute disaster. But we have to speed things up. We don't have time to wait.
And that's always a challenge with standards bodies like this. It's how do you prevent from getting to the least common denominator? So you want 80%, not 20. So you want to get to 80% of the value. And with a lot of entities in the room, that's not easier. And so, of course, like for ourselves, Gaia-X, I think it's interesting. We follow it from the sidelines. Maybe in the future, when we have time, we might join. But as a startup, how much influence do you truly have there? So my focus is becoming a business which is big enough to put our foot next to the people who are there already, and so that's also part of a thing. How much time do we have to get together? But definitely down the line, it's something that I see happening. And I think in our model, what we have additionally is also the economic part of sharing and collaboration is built into our model from the start. So the hardware providers get compensated for the usage for providing the hardware as utility to our network. And so it's more than just architecture documents and compliance documents and checks. And I think all those things are great. But it's the economic part makes it so much easier. The fact that we have that inside gives everybody the correct incentive to collaborate.
You segued me perfectly into the next question, actually. So thank you for that. Where I wanted to dive into talking about, for a business, sustainability is on the table, and it's definitely something people are increasingly thinking about. But it's also dependent on a balance of the business goals, keeping BAU, keeping clients happy, and balancing the kind of, yes, the environmental with your operational and then your economic responsibilities, right? So when those align, you have, sure, efficiency should flow more naturally. But for MSPs, how can we make sustainability make more business sense? Turn that sort of efficiency into actual commercial advantage?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's very important that sustainability is taken seriously and not a marketing term, a fluffy marketing term. So whenever I hear the word green IT, it drives me nuts. It drives me complete nuts. On one hand, on the positive side, especially data center operators have already done a lot, to save energy. They think about intelligent cooling, renewable energy. So that it's a very, very long list, and they're all over it, rightly so. Second thing, what I said, the life cycle of electronic devices in general. I mean, seriously, if we're moving out of the data center space, do I really need to buy a new mobile phone every year? Does that really make sense? Because the raw materials that are needed to build it, they're not endless, not at all. And the planet Earth has a lot to give, but we have to deal with those resources sensibly. I think cooling is still a big topic. I mean, we see immersion cooling solutions, liquid cooling solutions coming up. But if you think about, let's say, an approach where you would just heat your apartment or your house with air, people will go, that's crazy. Why would I do that? So why do we still do it in many, many data centers? Yeah, so I think there's a long list where the big players are already making good progress. They take it seriously, but I think everyone in the value chain of down to the MSP can do a lot to contribute, and only together we can achieve the goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the AI rage probably accelerated the liquid cooling aspects. I think in general, what the hyperscalers have been doing the last couple of years will do the same for power. So right now, they start with first getting a nuclear power plant, and then they build a data center around it. So I think the same efficiency gains are still to be had. I think there's some data center hardware, power, cooling, co-design that will percolate down from the hyperscalers into first, I think, the bigger colocation data centers, and then down the line. So I think more gains are coming there, indeed. But also for us, what's important that's the advantage we have as a service provider, and the internal components are abstracted away. That's also how the hyperscalers are able to optimize those things, and so we can do the same thing. And as Patricia mentioned in the beginning of the conversation, if I monitor the AFR of the devices in a machine, and sure that you have some. If you bring a new machine into the system in the beginning, there's some early infant mortality, and then the bathtub curve, you get to the bottom, and then year 3 probably it starts picking up again. But at year 5, there's still plenty of components which are good. And if it's part of the system where capacity is the goal, and not part of the hot data path for performance storage, then I can probably use that disk for 7 years instead of 5.
Yeah.
And so if you not only in terms of environmental impact, again, the environmental impact is better also because of the economic impact. If you make an economic impact, people will automatically do the right thing. So here, I mean, my cost per terabyte goes down because I now can write off this server over 7 years instead of over 5. And of course, that is value that allows us to have a more aggressive pricing, and that allows us to share this value with customers and with MSPs.
And you've got a very transparent approach to your pricing, right? And sort of removing egress fees and things like this. Can you talk about kind of that in relation to this sort of economic resilience as well for your partners?
There, I think at the show, somebody said today that 70% of the MSP projects go over, that they go over budget, that people budget for a year, and after 4 months, the budget is gone. And so in smaller companies, that's a disaster. And in bigger companies, people need to go and see their manager or the finance or planning departments I mean, this is not good for anybody. And so it again causes overhead, it causes a loss of trust. And I think there's no super direct relationship. I mean, if people want to read their data, they'll read their data, and that of course has an ecological footprint. And there's power consumed to access that. That will remain the same. But simply allowing people to plan better will build trust in the system. MSPs and customers, they all basically have a more transparent system where they can optimize it also from there. And if they don't know what's coming, they will not optimize. They will either be very careful or go on the other side, and they will not hit their optimum point. And so we want to help them, get them what they need. And of course, the fact that that's the advantage of being a public cloud provider, is that we aggregate across a lot of customers. We also have a white labeled solution where we provide the cloud to other parties. And so we brand it under their name. And so we multiplex all these workloads. And so that also allows us to offer this flexibility to everybody, which as an individual user, it would be harder to quickly scale up. We basically ensure that we always have a certain percentage of free space, because one of them might grow soon. And of course, they will not grow all at the same time. Hopefully they will. That would make us super happy, but that's typically not what happens. And so this multiplexing of different workloads onto the same physical devices is also really good for sustainability.
And we touched already in about the longevity and repairability of devices. So when we're thinking about that, how deeply does it, that extension of a server's life cycle actually reduce cost and by proxy the carbon footprint? When's the right time to upgrade then? Are we talking going from 5 to 7 years? Is that?
I'm not even sure if, number one, there's the financial impact. So the time period to write it off your books financially, that is one thing. It is important. And of course, if you want to be profitable, that plays a vital role. So if you're looking at any device itself, so there are components who have a more limited lifetime than others. Think about NVMe. Doesn't have the same lifetime like an HDD, as a very simple example. But still, you don't have to throw the entire box into the bin when you can maybe continue using it and just replacing the NVMe or the hard drive. Boards, the same. The manufacturers or the board manufacturers could, as an example, say, I'm not only providing you firmware upgrades for a period of 5 years, I'm going to give it to you for a period of 10 years. So that has a huge impact on sustainability.
And if your software system built on top can deal with partial outages of the system, this is no issue. People, you just say, okay, don't service more than 2-3 nodes in the same data center at the same time. And people one by one can swap out some boards, bring the server back up, wait a minute, service the next one.
Yeah. So we touched on Gaia-X, and we talked about these are frameworks built by essentially the community, right? But and they're setting the direction for sovereignty and sustainable practices. But what about policy? What about regulation? For people not kind of understanding what's out there at the moment, it's around areas like circularity and resource reuse. How are we seeing the lay of the land here?
Well, number one, there is this EU regulation, the right for repair, which I think is an excellent start, because that really stops manufacturers to deliberately. I mean, everyone knows the tumble dryer or the dishwasher. It breaks 2 days after the warranty period is over.
Yes.
Yeah. So and that's the same. I mean, it's why not build it in a way that a technician, an expert can repair it. Like 10 years ago, we were told by our customers that the salary of an administrator inside a data center is too high. So these guys should not kind of touch the hardware in the rack, like opening the lid and replacing a disk in case of a failure. That has changed, fortunately. Yes, you need rules and regulations, because that is the kick in the shins many manufacturers need to change also their financial models. Because let's be honest, that has an impact on their business as well, and how they calculate the pricing. But we have to find a good balance, not to overdo it, but we need rules and regulations, because otherwise nothing is going to change, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I have to second that. I think, as I said at the beginning, it's so opaque, and the industry does not do a good job at making it easy. Like, everybody's compatible, and everybody's durable, and everybody's available, and nobody lets you look under the hood, and everybody is ISO certified. And so these are all good efforts, but they're not enough. And so, as an industry, we need to. There's room for different types of systems. Like, you don't need the same availability in a cold storage system than you have in a hot one, and you don't need the same performance as well. So I think some transparency would help also MSPs and end customers make an informed choice.
Yeah, no, I think proprietary systems is not the future. Compatibility will become key. So I don't think that you can really achieve a good level of sustainability without compatible systems. And that doesn't mean that vendors won't survive, because there are enough other differentiators. But let's say APIs and that kind of stuff. I mean, think about the madness and how long it took for the EU to at least kind of kill that madness about phone charging cables. Every vendor using his own little adapter. It's crazy. Let's agree on a certain standard so I can charge any phone with one cable. That makes perfect sense. That is sustainability.
So we talked about projects like Future RAM and is it Future RAM and the WEE Forum. These are calls for sort of better recycling infrastructure in Europe. When we're looking at the MSP audience, is this opening new business models for them? Is this an opportunity? Not just reducing waste, but actually creating value from that?
I mean, we have already vendors out there who, as an example, collect hard drives. Yeah. Also, of course, any flash drives. So let's say drives in general, and that comes more from a data protection point of view, who really safely destroys it. Now, if you think ahead, and you also had other, let's say, let me call them service providers, who would not only destroy them and make sure that no data gets leaked to anywhere, but that they would also be able to recycle some of the raw materials. I think that is a huge industry and huge revenue streams. The only problem is we don't have the facilities in Europe.
Yeah.
So even if you think about mobility. Yeah, let's get away from the traditional engines using petrol and diesel. Yeah. So, but what do you do with all the batteries? You need to recycle them. You can't just dump them somewhere. But dig a hole, and no, that doesn't work.
Also here, full system design, we still have a way to go. If the data is encrypted, for instance, by the software system, there is nothing there to be found. And so many times I've worked in companies where then it was, hey, this data, It's no longer used. There's a completely empty hard disk. Let's wipe it and use it somewhere else. And it's like, no, there's this, some of these compliance or legal frameworks don't help. And they're not enough, but sometimes they're also wrong. Like here, you just have to put the pin through the hard disk physically to comply. And it's so stupid if the data has been encrypted and you overwrite it, there's no risk of that leaking. But you need to understand the full system, hardware and software co-design, and we're not there yet as an industry.
So, I mean, looking ahead, when we think of this kind of like regulation conversation or and policy, could you imagine sustainability and like resource recovery audits taking place in the future and that becoming more standard practice?
Audits is again difficult, because then you immediately start, okay, what company side do I start with audits? Is it like 10 employees, 20 employees, 100, 1,000? Where do you start? So and again, I'm not saying that I'm against audits, but at the moment that is a tough question, because I'm not really sure whether I would like it or say this is not feasible. And again, a lot of, let's say, administration, whereas we should maybe better use this time to sit together as an industry, liaise, make sure that the experts connect and that we tackle some of the other topics we discussed, like compatibility, etc., reusing the hard drives, perfect examples, and get rid of regulations that don't make sense, rather than adding another bunch.
Administration also has a sustainability impact. If we need to spend our time doing that and our resources, then we won't be able to optimize some other part of the system.
I want to get now towards closing out and taking a bit of a look ahead, but are there any areas when we think of this topic matter, sort of sustainability as an imperative, that you really think we should spend some time on before we do that?
To me, the entire recycling topic is very important. And also what a lot of data center operators already do is how we can intelligently do with all the heat produced inside a data center to distribute it intelligently to somewhere else, whether it's a private house or another office building, a church, a hospital, I don't care. But I think there's still a lot of space for really intelligent people to find better ways to leverage the resources we have.
Yeah, I think thinking about that, for instance, the data center operators, depending on the system using it, again, hardware, software, co-design, replacements might or might not be urgent. If a hard disk fails, then the system will automatically recreate the missing data in all the other hard disks. All the other hard disks will work together to repair the data which was on the hard disk, and it can sit there and only be replaced maybe in 2 weeks or in a month, when somebody comes in once and replaces multiple broken devices. For some other components, there is an emergency, and you want to keep your HA or to keep your performance level up. You want to have a quick replacement, but not always. So that was reacting to that comment. I think the core question you asked, it's what I said earlier. I think it has to have an economic impact, so to nudge people to do the right thing, and then they will do it. I mean, then they will. So that's for me the key. How do we make this attractive for the different entities in the system? And maybe that will require some regulations and some, as you said, calculating the true costs of certain of these rare earth metals and stuff like that.
And as you mentioned, software, I think there's also another important element. So you see certain software providers who are also dominating the market. They could for sure optimize their code that the software doesn't get that resource hungry. Laptops, very, very good example. Very often the ISV says the hardware components are no longer supported, or your CPU is indeed running out. So, but when you use another OS, so the hardware runs perfectly well. It's performant again. It doesn't overheat. So there's a lot of optimization the ISV can also apply in their code.
Yeah. I want to close out then, as I said, looking ahead a little bit and thinking about the truly sustainable MSP of the future. Like, what does that look like? Obviously, we've got AI is only accelerating the need for compute. Like, we need to be defining better practices for the future. What will be the factor that is going to make an MSP truly sustainable stand out as we continue to service our industry?
Well, back to the basics, I think be a local hero, use local resources. The closer the resources you need as an MSP, that could be a data center, it could be anything else, the better. So when you have access to renewable energy, make good use of it. I mean, I understand that's not feasible for each location and each and every one, but I think there's a long list for MSPs where they can really optimize, and also, most importantly, because they are customers of, other companies. When customers put a lot of pressure onto the manufacturers, the vendors, they will react. Yes. So what Thomas said is absolutely correct, and I totally agree. It has to make sense economically, but also I think MSPs can really turn around to their vendors and saying, "Hey guys, what are you doing here? That's not what I want. That's not what I need. I need X, Y, Z." And the more pressure lands with the vendor, chances are very likely that they will react and do a better job.
So the power is actually with the MSPs.
I think the MSPs are very powerful. They just need to make good use of that power. A lot of them do, so don't get me wrong, but I think they're very powerful.
I mean, always the closer you are to the end customer, the more value there is. And so it's a way of how do we organize that? There's so much opportunity there. They have the leverage. And so how do we organize that? And that's what all these standards bodies and regulations are an attempt in doing that into how can we, the power that's there with the end customers, how can we concentrate that so that it gets wielded in an efficient way?
It's clear to me today from listening to you both that it's not just about energy or compliance. It's really thinking about smarter design, transparency in our business models, and really taking ownership as a community for how we build the future of technology in Europe, right? Like and creating a sovereign European ecosystem. So the MSPs then who will thrive are those who are going to treat efficiency, sovereignty, and fairness not as just these extras, but as kind of core architecture. Any leaving comments? Otherwise, I'm going to just say thank you to you both.
Well, just one closing comment. I think it's also very important to really have sustainability as a topic in education in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you work in IT, whatever you're going to do, there is a certain piece of, education that has to happen, because otherwise you can't do your job properly. So far, we have been concentrating on the bits and bytes and what great stuff we can do, but sustainability hasn't really been an essential part of any form of education, be it university or apprenticeship or whatever.
Yeah, and the things that we do now affects the next generation, And
oh yes.
so educating.
I was going to say exactly that. I got a nice compliment in the beginning of the show when Patricia called me young, but unfortunately I turned 42 this week, and
happy birthday.
Thank you. And of course, there's indeed. I think there's also these younger generations. Every generation feels differently about this. It's also, I think, a culture thing, which is changing a little bit. It goes in waves. It always comes back and forth. So I think young people today, the people in my team who come out of university, are more conscious to this or give this a higher value priority in their lives than I think my generation.
Absolutely, they are very conscious, which is great. But I think also they're not really conscious; they're also curious. And I think in education, and why not starting it at school? I think this whole sustainability topic has to be addressed.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Patricia, Thomas, thank you to both of you for sharing your insights and perspectives today, and keep doing the great work you are doing. For anyone joining in, thank you for being with us and continuing this conversation, because the more we collaborate on sustainability, the stronger and more resilient this industry becomes. Thank you once again.